Hi, this is Kevin Van Trump. I am giving it my first shot here at this going live on YouTube. I had a lot of subscribers and a lot of readers call in, write in, ask me if I'd give some more quick updates on where we're at here with the current situation in the markets, in the ag markets in particular, and what we have going on. I should explain my daughter Kennedy, she is out of quarantine, so she's good to go. We're very, Michelle and I are appreciative of the fact that the U.S. Embassy got her out of Italy, in plenty of time, and she's healthy and everything's good. She took her temperatures for 14, 15 days, and she's in great health and looks to be doing good. I had to go in the dang hospital for a minor surgery about a week or so ago. Had to go back and get checked up. It was interesting when I went back there, doing temperature checks on everyone, and everybody's masked up, and it's definitely a new world that we live in here. So I'm going to try make my old habits, try and get young again here with live streaming and web streaming. So we're doing well. Like I said, we're out at the what we call the compound in the woods. Michelle and I and the kids are they're in town, and they're taking care of our properties and some of our real estate and some of our other things. So I think we'll be doing more podcasts, more webinars, more informational type things from this moment forward. So we'll just kind of see how it goes and play it by ear. I'm sure the graphics will get a lot better when I get a better camera and we get some better audio. So I appreciate everyone's patience and look forward to talking to you a little bit more. Most of the calls, most of the talks with my trader friends and some of my other buddies, professional traders I used to work with in Chicago and here at the Kansas City Board Trading, the other places, trying to pick a bottom, trying to figure out, nobody wants to catch a falling knife, so to speak. And this is just dangerous waters. I mean, a lot of us have never seen anything quite like this in our entire career. We've been trading and investing for, 30, 50 years, many guys even longer than that. So, you start to just look at historical data and you start to try and see if there's some things you can latch onto or find that may be of some significance. We think, as most of us all talk, this thing's going to happen. The bottom, it's probably going to come sooner than it has in previous historical market buckles or crashes. 0708, I should say 08, 09, it took a little bit of extended time before we had a bottom or a bottoming process. We've come to learn, and we believe that everything's happening faster and faster. All the cycles are becoming shorter and quicker and faster with high frequency trading, algo trading, and the quant type models. So, we think that this happens fast and furious. We're not certain what type of extent or damage or carnage is going to be done to the overall markets. We definitely believe it's going to be severe. We've never seen anything quite like this or any magnitude where we've shut down the entire United States. We were getting this intel in back closer to the Super Bowl, and we started lifting some positions and making some hedges and changes. And my son and a few of the people in the office thought maybe I'd really lost touch with the markets. And we kept making new highs into the 2-3 weeks following the Super Bowl. And, I just was scratching my head in disbelief that we were going to make these new highs into this virus. And I think it was really being downplayed. We had good handle on it, though, since, like I said, since my daughter was in Italy. And Michelle and I were supposed to be going on a 3-month trip to Europe. So we were all set to leave. Had good boots on the ground and good intel coming in. So I was hearing that things were getting a little dicey, and then it really broke out here. And I think, we have, we got all hands on deck, so to speak, and everyone's in scramble mode. And we're trying to see what we can do to contain. Unfortunately, I think, on most of my contacts and the senators and the different people who subscribe to the report, our contacts in Washington and in other areas of the United States through the financial system, it feels like contain maybe off the board here. I think it's more now just trying to mitigate and try and reduce the curve on the spread. And I think as they try and do that, it may extend out some of the negative impact in the economy and make things slow down a little bit longer, unfortunately. So we're going to watch that and pay close attention. If we go back and look, we were targeting originally maybe somewhere in the 1,700 to 2,100 range for the S&P, and a lot of people thought maybe we were nuts that we could get that type of setback. But hell, we're here right now. We're real close. We're knocking on the door at 2,100. There's some psychological and technical support, obviously, right in that 2,100 range. 1700 range, you start getting down closer. There's some other big numbers there for some tech traders. Now, a lot of my friends and guys I used to trade with on the floor, we'd always say in times of crises like this, I mean, throw the technical charts out the window. We're in uncharted waters here. And a lot of guys on the floor used to say, every boat at the bottom of the ocean had a chart on it. And as we know, that didn't work out too swell for them. So, it's tough to hang on to technical analysis here at this juncture. I think, we're just going to have to play it by ear. One piece of data that we find interesting, and some of the funds that we find interesting, is if you go back, and I kind of just drew it up because I wanted to show everyone. If you go back and look at the high in 07, if I can flip this around a little bit, your high in 07 was in this range right here. The market peaked October of 07. We take the first big leg lower, and then we kind of travel side to side in July to September of 08. Now in July and September of 08 is when we first started to see unemployment claims really tick higher. So the market had already broke. Then we started to see unemployment claims tick higher, and that extended out. Well, you can see here, the market bottoms, as you can see here on March of 09, we take the big tumbles, market bottoms in March of 9, and then we start to rebound back. The market doesn't make a high in unemployment claims until about the third or fourth week of March of 09. But we sniff it out in the S&P somewhere about 3 weeks prior to that. So really the bottom line, what we're trying to figure out is when are unemployment claims going to peak? We've seen Google data, and all the data and analytics we get back on the Google side of things is that Google search for unemployment skyrocketing. We've moved higher 3 days in a row fairly aggressively. It took us a few months in 08 to really start to see unemployment claims tick higher. And we're a little concerned that it's going to hit fast and furious. So you're going to see the employment numbers really jump and skyrocket. And to find a low, we'd like to be about 4 weeks ahead of that. So what I'm trying to say is this. We got to think about when will unemployment peak, and when the markets tend to bottom at peak chaos. So make sure you understand that. The markets tend to bottom out when we have peak chaos. Now the question is, when's peak chaos? When is peak unemployment reached as far as new filings and things of that nature? And we want to then look, if we think peak unemployment happens in, let's say, August, well, we think then we probably bottom sometime in July. We think we'll bottom out about a month before that, maybe even a little more. There's some folks that think peak unemployment is going to happen in 4 weeks from now. You're going to have all the hotels lay everyone off, all the restaurants lay everyone off, everyone's going to be laid off. It's just going to be an immediate boom, and everyone's going to be laid off within the next 4 weeks. If you're of that belief and you think that's how it's going to go down, we may start to bottom here fairly soon. I mean, because that'd be about 4 weeks ahead of time. I don't know. I think that's the big question. How long are some of the biggest U.S. companies going to hold on to their employees? And that's really where we have this little bit of a perfect storm. You have a really tight labor market in the corporations and the biggest CEOs that we partner with. We got this really tight labor market, and they don't want to let their employees go. Nobody wants to let their employees go. They've all worked hard to get the employees. Everyone's kind of, in a groove and moving along. And so you want to try and hang on to your employees as long as you can. At the same time, most of the big companies had a great cash balance sheet, but the cash burn has been so extensive, so fast, it's caught a lot of them by surprise. So we're worried that some of the CEOs are going to hang on and try and hang on as long as they can to their employees. But at the same time, we got super, super cheap interest. So low interest, if you're a banker and you're running a big bank, it's just really tough to get a lot of incentive to loan money to a business owner who know's on the ropes if you're only going to get 3% interest or 2% interest. The risk to reward is really difficult for the banks at that point. So, the banks, the worry is that the banks can become tight-fisted and don't loan aggressively to the business owners and small business owners that are in desperate need. And if that happens, that's when we get a lockdown. I always like to tell friends and family and the kids, the Fed's like a 10-speed bike. They can control how hard or easy it is to pedal the bike. But the U.S. consumer actually controls the brakes. We're about 70, 73% of GDP here in the U.S. And like I said, when the consumer starts to hit the brakes, we start to really slow down the bike, regardless of what gear the Fed has us in. Now, the Fed can make it a little bit easier and more incentivized to the bankers and to make that play. So, I proposed and threw out to some of our senators today in Washington that think about and talk to the banks, talk to the lending institutions. I feel like I have a lot of friends. We grew up, Michelle and I, we didn't have any money. We grew up and I feel like, the best way you could help American families is probably go out there right now and take 3 months of house payments and move them to the rears, take 3 months of car payments, move them to the rears. Let some of the, and then let the government try and work with some of the banks and the lending institutions that are holding some of the mortgage paper and some of the bank paper, and then reassess in 3 months. You got to move them back again. Another 3 months, you move them back again. I mean, the main key here is I think families have to understand and recognize that they're going to have a roof over their head and a car to take the kids and the family to get food. So, I think those are the big biggies. What we're hearing from Washington, they're going to start making some type of subsidy payments, direct payments to consumers in U.S. households. So I just think it's going to not feel like a lot, even though it's going to be a massive amount. If a lot of people get $1,000 check in the mail for a family, yes, that is a good gesture. But with most folks having house payments that are above that number and utility payments and kids and expenses, it's going to be tough. Health insurance, cars. I know we're going to be hunkered down, but that's going to be a tough one. So, our time scope and what we're trying to figure out is when do these layoffs hit? How long can these CEOs hold on? If we forecast out and think about it, I think we may level off here a little bit in the S&P and start to calm down a touch in the stock market, maybe for the next week or two, as the government steps in and does a few more things and some other players step in and we start to make some adjustments and just get our bearings a little bit about us. But then I'm afraid we probably make another leg lower. Keep in mind, we've closed each month, January, February, and March, making in negative territories, meaning January is negative, February was negative, and March was negative. We've only done that maybe a handful of times since the mid 50s. And with that being the case, 4 of those 5 times we ended up lower on the year. So I don't foresee a V-shaped recovery. I think it's not going to just bounce. It's going to do some damage and it's going to be U-shaped. And I don't think people are going to pop their head back out and go wild. I think it's going to take some time. Most of the people, and I'm not telling you probably anything you don't already know now. We were hearing this not several, but at least a few weeks back. This thing probably peaks, best case scenario, they're saying this thing might peak as far as peak infections sometime in end of May, somewhere out in that area, maybe 30, 60 days from now. Worst case scenario, you push that a little bit further back. There was talk, we were on a call yesterday, and there was talk, we'll probably have 10,000 plus cases in the U.S. By this weekend. So it's going to escalate fast and it's going to move quickly. We're already moving, like we'd seen. I mean, we're moving some ships, some U.S. military ships off the coast of New York. They're setting up some makeshift type of places, hospitalization places in various cities. I got a couple of friends that I'm on their board with their companies, and they're with the DOD. Some of them were head engineers at some big firms and some other board seats that we're on, where we get some good information and good insight. But we think things are going to get worse before they get better. Obviously, the coast are going to be the most heavily impacted, at least at this juncture. Florida's probably going to turn into some type of hotbed. They're forecasting just because, like we've seen, the kids that are passing it to the elderly and the older. So I'm not going to sit here and dwell on the things we already hear and all the doomsday stuff that we hear on the news. The other big headwind that we're battling is this new, fight amongst the heavyweights between the Saudis and Russia with oil prices. So we got this massive depreciation or devaluation and fallout in the oil sector. And my old man and other people here in town, they love the price of gasoline's getting cheaper. You busted crude oil. I mean, crude oil, we've never seen a break like this. And you got the lowest crude oil prices in 18 years. Basically, when Russia didn't show up they showed up at the last OPEC meeting, but didn't want to agree to the cuts. The Saudis wanted to cut some more production. They had agreements from the OPEC nations to cut production. from the crude sector, crude side. Russia didn't jump on board with that. The Saudis just wanted to try and keep supply off the market and to balance the price of crude at around the level it was at, gasoline price, trading in that 250 range, probably at the pump. They just wanted to take some supply off because they saw what was coming with the virus and things like that, and they just wanted to stabilize the supply. Russia said, hell with it. We need the money, and we're going to keep pumping, and essentially that's what they said. Now, there's some people that want to say that Russia played the game like a champ and is trying to ultimately get back at the United States for some of our pipeline, I guess some of our political maneuvers with some pipelines and some sanctions. So, I mean, any way you want to play it out, basically, Saudi is tired, of Russia with the massive amount of crude they're pumping. They're obviously getting seriously damaged by the U.S. frac side of things and the amount of fuel that we are, I should say, oil that we have been pumping and becoming a negative exporter of one. So that has Saudis worried and concerned. They wanted to try and cut back some production. Russia really wasn't on board. Now the Saudis just did an about face and said, hell with it. Then we're just going to pump the hell out of oil. And then we're going to flood the entire market and the entire world with oil. There's going to be so much oil that, I hope everyone loves it. But what that's going to do and what the problem is, it's going to cheapen oil to a point where U.S. oil fracking business and U.S. oil refiners, manufacturers, I should say the refiners, the manufacturers and the drillers of U.S. oil aren't going to be able to make any money. And so they have some big debt payments and some big debt loads tied to a lot of U.S. banks, and you're going to have a massive shakedown in the energy sector. So yes, oil getting cheaper, it's nice for us at the pump as Americans and as folks that needed to work, even though we're hunkered down right now. But it's just going to rip the face off some folks in the energy side of this thing on the crude oil side. And that starts to spill over then into other areas where banks are levered up with some of these oil companies and these fracking companies through the Dakotas and through Texas. And, like I said, up and down in the Eagle Ford area and up through the Balkans, there's going to be some rippling effects. And a lot of the energy loans are tied to banks that are deep in the ag sector. So, you've seen the spillover. We've taken corn down to really tough levels, and we're down here trading in this 330 range. We got beans down here at 830 and wheat's trading close around $5. But I dipped a toe in the water for what it's worth. I bought some beans today. I've been long some rice. The rough rice play, obviously, we've been long some rice. We did have a tight balance sheet going into this. We were long and we were writing and discussing things and talking to people about rice before this broke. But it couldn't have been a better wild card in our hand. Every survivalist, I should say, prepper and doomsday are out there. Rice is top of the list, and everywhere you go, rice is sold out. So that's been a good play for us. Like I said, I did just dip a toe in the water here on the soybean market. Our play on soybeans is simply this: we got a fairly tight balance sheet. 425, 450 million bushels of beans in ending stocks. South America did just have a record crop, I should say, with Brazil. They've ticked back a little bit as of late. Had some dry weather in some parts of Argentina and into Brazil. And, I'm starting to worry that as this virus gets into South America, and remember, South America, it's going to start cooling down over there. We're partners in some farm grounds through different parts of South America. And, we got pretty good intel on that line. So, it's going to start cooling down over there. And we just worry. If we're having a hell of a time controlling the virus here in the United States and getting it to stop spreading and things like that, I'm telling you, it's going to run like wildfire when it gets into South America or gets into some deeper areas of Africa and some parts of the Black Sea region where we see cheap wheat come out of. Those are going to be some issues in some problem areas. And I think it's going to be, just interesting to see. I don't think those people are going to be able to deliver. What we saw happen in China, a lot of the lower end workers didn't show up. It starts to become a risk to reward ratio. I was telling a lot of people that today. I said, people are going to go to work at Casey's, for $10 an hour, or Quick Trip for $10 an hour, and stand in the store and have to touch all the money and have to touch everything that's coming through and be there with you. Simply starts to become a risk to reward ratio for some folks. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that about Quick Trip or Casey's. I don't know that for a fact. I do know this. We've had calls from the president of some important associations with cattle, with pork industries, poultry, that when they started to shut down the elementary schools, a lot of the people that work at the processing plants a lot of them were women. and minority women and from different backgrounds. And when they shut those schools down, the mamas had to stay home or opted to stay home with the kids, and it's really cut back on the ability to process the pork and process the beef. And we had heard today that there were some rumors floating around that a couple of people tested positive at a huge beef processing plant. We didn't get any confirmation of it, but all that's going to happen is the government. We had friends that had they got about 12 restaurants in New York. And it's people we knew that had, through friends of ours, that someone had tested positive, I guess. The owner of the company did not know they had tested positive. I don't think the person had been to work in over a week or two, but they got a call from the government. The government said, hey, we got someone here that tested positive. We tracked back the tax ID number on the last payroll tax, and they're working at your place. You need to shut down all your restaurants. And that was it, and it happened that fast. So they can track it back to you. Our big event here in Kansas City, FarmCon, we've already been in touch. We've had our attorneys contact us, and it isn't until next January. But, there's liability concerns. There's things, if someone were to come to your event or work on one of your job sites that has corona, there's some liability being talked about if it spreads to other people. So I don't know all the legalities. Like I said, it's turned everyone upside down without question. Now it's just we're going to have to try and just sit and mitigate, like I said, mitigate some of this risk. So, our newest positions, like I said, I bought some beans on the break yesterday. I'm barely dipping a toe in, taking it real easy. We bought a little wheat, long some spring wheat from before. I'm long some rice. I've hedged. I was short some S&Ps just to hedge our 401k and our retirement portfolio. So we really haven't gotten super rocked. I have started looking at some U.S. ag stocks. There are a few of them that I've started to just nibble on a little bit, as you start to move into the, leadership role of agriculture as we move forward. One thing that we're certain of is people are going to have to eat. And we think and we believe that the powers that be in Washington are going to keep those lines open. We think the food, even if you look back to polio, you look back through history, food was never really the major. I heard some folks say they did a little bit of rationing of food during the polio, but no one ever really went hungry. You go back to the Spanish flu days, you were talking a significant number of deaths, major fallout from the deaths. And, I think, I don't really think food's going to be what comes into factor here. I think it's going to be more, try and reduce the curve of the transmissions. And if you can slow the curve, maybe you can slow the total death, and then maybe get the economy back up and online faster rather than stringing out longer. So I think those are really the big issues. Like I said, if you're looking to find, where could the bottom be? I think you have to try and forecast when's peak unemployment. When's the real carnage going to be on the U.S. consumer, which is what we're most concerned about and most worried about here on our end. So, keep tracking Google searches. We're watching a lot of satellite traffic data as well. We've been watching a lot of satellite data come out of Wuhan, Hebei province, and over into Beijing. And, they basically had, I'm just letting you know, if you look in the satellite imagery of the air quality and the movement on the streets, I mean, they came to a standstill in Wuhan. They're still not bad. I mean, they're still not getting much movement at all on the streets through our satellite imagery and data that we get sent to us. So, I like I said, I don't know. I think it's going to take some time. They're still locked down. They weren't moving at all on the weekends and at nights. They had started to come back online, get a few government workers and things back in place. Italy's lost. I mean, Italy's off the edge right now. I think, they missed it. I think, they're going to overtake China at the most deaths. I think they had 450 deaths in the last 24 hours. And we're hearing that you got doctors over there just having complete meltdowns, and they're, essentially lining some people up and in the halls at some of these hospitals, and they're just having to pick who they save and who they don't save. And I think, the older you are, you're probably not getting saved. The less healthy, you got pre-existing conditions. It's not pretty, especially in that northern area. But there was such free movement of people, like my daughter said. I mean, there was just really free movement of people and so many tourists in that Italian area and through those places. And, we had in Milan that week that it started to get a little dicey, and I wanted to get her out on a early flight, an early plane that we had a chance to get her out on. That in Milan was Fashion Week, where there were hundreds of thousands of people from maybe not hundreds of thousands, but there were 100,000 plus people from all over the world. A lot of people from the United States, I mean, that were there in Milan. Some of my daughters, like I said, friends, roommates, people were there for Fashion Week. And they all had to go back to their countries. And I think that's, it's just one of those deals. I think it got away from Italy early. I just think people didn't have a real super good grasp on how difficult it was going to be to contain and control. So I don't know. Michelle and I are here. She's sitting over here. Maybe we'll say hey.
Hello.
Hello. And like I said, we'll be trying to do some more of these, keep everyone updated. I like do different things on different positions I've got going. What we're hearing, like I said, from the fund side thing. I think they closed, obviously, I know they closed the New York Stock Exchange. They're going to be working remotely. I know a lot of big banks with the biggest traders, they moved them off remotely to undisclosed locations where they're kind of on lockdown. So the bigger banks, they're going to keep going. Things are going to keep rolling. I know there have been some limitations put on some banks. I heard out in some areas where you can only withdraw 200, 400, I think we're going to have to let that subside for a minute. I tell folks when I was learning to trade in Chicago at the Board of Trade of the Merc, I mean, you always got to think about peak chaos. And, if you were on the Titanic, I always say, when was peak chaos? I think everyone's freaking out right now and everyone's just going nuts and it's understandable. I mean, it's a scary situation without question. So, but once we come to the realization that we're probably getting in the water, I mean, the boat's probably going to take on some water here and we're getting in the water. I think you're going to see, I think you're going to see Americans rise to the occasion. I think you're going to see people come up with a cure. I think you're going to see global leaders and some of our best and brightest rally and make some things happen. I think they're going to, overcome this. Like I said, it's going to take a little bit of time. I think it's going to take some time. So I think you're going to have to see some tents set up in Walmart and Target parking lot. I think you're going to have to see the tents set up. You're going to have to see some sick people lined up at some facilities outside of hospitals as they try to curtail the curve on the virus. And we're going to have to know some people that have it that are nearby and loved ones. And that's going to get tough. And I think that's going to be where you're probably at peak chaos. And from there, we're going to learn how to cope. We're going to learn how to deal with it. And we're going to come out on the other side. And like I said, hopefully everyone is better for it. So that's really all our take is right now. We're just going to hunker down, do the best we can, like I said, to get through. Michelle's got a bunch of playing cards. We're going to, be battling each other out in a little gin every night. And, she's got some puzzles set up. And like I said, we're just trying to keep busy. Worked out a little bit this morning and went on a little walk around the property and did some things. And that's really about it. So it's going to be tough for everyone. Like I said, hunker down and, and try and make the best of it. I think it's going to be really tough to keep, mentally strong and to keep yourself physically strong and stay out of the doctor's offices and try and stay away from that and, and stay healthy on that front. So it's just going to take a mindful, proactive approach, have a plan. And, if anybody needs anything from us or Michelle and I, our numbers and got the email. So we're open for it. So let us know if we can help. Appreciate everyone. You guys have a good night. Thanks. Bye.